Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Can I get a louder alaikum assalam? Let's wake up. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Jazakumullah khair, for allowing me to be inspired by this gathering. I like to think of myself as a lifelong educator. And what most effective teachers can attest to is to the fact that we gain just as much, if not more, from the act of teaching than those listening to learn from us. So prior to my role as an administrator at the college, I was a teacher for a number of years. I actually ran into some former students tonight. And so a lot of what's made me who I am today besides my faith is my teaching experience. So this takes me back to a point in my life that seemed a bit dark. I was just graduating college, and I was starting to lose myself from the stresses of college life, work, peer pressure, financial concerns, and a decline in my own faith. Growing up Arab American, where my Arabic was shaky, I had internalized the false narrative that had been so often projected upon me and my peers that we were doomed to be failed Muslims because we did not master Arabic and we grew up in a public school system in the US. Yup, we were all destined to Jahannam, a'udhu billah, or so we were led to believe. Coupled with the social pressures of American culture, I was struggling to strike the balance between being Arab, being American, and staying Muslim. I started to lose purpose and direction in my life and felt like I was trapped in a very emotionally dark and lonely place. For the sake of time, I will leave many details out, but my experiences were nothing short of miraculous. Anyhow, in despair, I did the one thing I thought would make sense. I called out to God to guide me, and as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always does, He responded in ways that are clear to me now, but didn't seem to be so obvious to me at that time. After college graduation, I had reluctantly accepted a job at an Islamic school, something I never imagined I would ever consider, but due to not getting the position I had hoped for in a public school right away as a teacher, I needed a job and decided to give this a shot. I remember it was Ramadan that fall when I had began the school year, and so because I was fasting, I'd spend my lunch hour waiting for time to pass. I was not a big fan of reading at that time, but due to the lack of funding in most private schools, I didn't have a phone or a computer to use in my classroom to make time go by any faster. My cell phone reception didn't reach the classroom, and I was working in another city, so I couldn't go home or hang out with friends during my lunchtime either. Now in hindsight, this too was part of Allah's greater plan. So one day I got up and walked over to sort the bookshelf in my classroom and stumbled on one book that was much higher level than my 4th grade students. It was Yahya Emerich's Critical Lives about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I figured, hey, why not flip through this book while the kids are at lunch? That started my journey to my own personal connection with Islam, one based on my own conviction rather than a watered-down version inherited by birth. Immediately, I was hooked on the book. And 2/3 of the way through, I found myself crying at the beauty of this man's character, alayhi salatu wasalam. As I continued to teach at the school, I began to notice something strange about one of my students, who was extremely bright. He was kind, well-rounded, and had a glow to him. As a new teacher, I almost felt intimidated. I was concerned that his energy level might become problematic, but this boy was always so on point, mashallah, that it never did. It was almost as though he was gifted with this ball of light that stayed contained within his space and only flooded goodness to others. One day, as the Quran teacher came in to practice recitations with the students, I decided to stick around and work on grading papers inside the classroom instead of leaving to the lounge like I normally do during my prep time. As each student practiced, nothing caught my attention until this young boy, Ibrahim, came to recite. MashaAllah, he had the most beautiful recitation, something that was clearly not acquired from that 1 hour in the classroom. I was so inspired that this child, also Arab American, but much younger than myself, had the ability to be fully American, yet still master his relationship with the Quran. So after Quran class, I asked him if he had learned how to recite that well from school, and he explained that his father would spend time teaching him at home daily. As the school year progressed, I realized that when I would teach a lesson on Islamic studies, the students as well as myself would light up. It was a refreshingly different experience. These lessons were not like any of the other lessons we learned in class. These carried a spiritual element in them that awakened something within my own soul. I began developing an attachment to the remembrance of dhikr of Allah that would occur in my classroom. I feared the thought of having to leave that work environment. I had become addicted to the spiritual high of actively remembering Allah during my day, and leaving would be like taking a fish out of water. I dreaded the thought of losing that little bit of myself I'd started to find. SubhanAllah, I went from being repelled by the thought of working in a religious setting to dreading having to leave it. Unfortunately, the distance and other pressures had me leave that school, and I took a job at another closer Islamic school, shout out to ICD, until I was able to find something that would offer better pay. I convinced myself it is not the school I'm attached to, but rather the dhikr of Allah, and I can take that with me anywhere I go. The new school paid very minimal, but I realized that somehow God was putting barakah in my pay, and my money was stretching quite far. I remember starting the day off with the adhkar and the uplifting energy the Islamic school had. Although underfunded at that time, I was in the school for 2 months, hired at the end of the year to cover for a teacher who fell ill. Like the first school, I noticed there were several students who stood out. Ayat was amongst them. Ayat's mother and I became very good friends, and I actually attended Ayat's Khatm al-Kitab last week, mashallah. Ayat's mother made sure to instill Quran in the upbringing of her children, and until today it is evident, mashallah. The following fall, I started subbing as a long-term substitute teacher at a public school with a large population of Muslim kids. This time, my students were middle school kids midway through the year. I noticed I had one student out of all of the 150 or so students I would see a day who had similar attributes to Ibrahim and Ayat. Hafsa was a straight A student and would ace every math test and assignment I'd give, mashallah. She was well-behaved, but also socially well-rounded, strong yet humble, and also had this presence to her that reminded me of Ibrahim, Ayat, and a few of my other former students who too shared these extraordinary attributes. By this time, I couldn't help but ask Hafsa, "Does someone teach you Quran at home?" I had to be a little careful because I was in a public school setting now, so I didn't want to impose. So her response was with the affirmative that yes, her father, I believe it was, ensures they practice it every day. Years later, I would attend a scholarship dinner where Hafsa was coincidentally being awarded a full-ride U of M Ann Arbor scholarship. While Ayat graduated high school early, she completed it within a few months in an accelerated homeschool program and was working towards her bachelor's degree by age 16, mashallah. I've had many other students who shared similar attributes and came to learn that there were active relationships with the Quran, that their active relationship with the Quran was a contributing factor to their success. I even thought of doing a full-blown study on the effects of Quran on cognitive, social, and emotional development, but I never got around to it. So instead, I learned off my students and began mastering recitation of Quran at home by myself. Immediately, I saw impacts on my physical health, subhanAllah, emotional well-being, psychological relief from stress, as well as my intellectual capacity. My ability to retain information was so much greater. I started to exude a glow that others would notice on me that would increase or decrease depending on my fluctuating connection to the Quran. Through the power of the Quran, my students unintentionally inspired their teacher to transform her own life, and it was all God's plan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response to my desperate call for His guidance at that time of darkness. As I began my own renewed spiritual journey, I was able to go back to school, collect another degree for fun, graduating with honors with ease, alhamdulillah, as I was excelling at work, was able to pay off student loans within the grace period, alhamdulillah. My own social and emotional intelligence significantly improved. My relationships were improving with people. I developed a keen understanding for the world and others, and it became natural for me to succeed in many aspects of my life that had been more challenging before. You see, when you truly understand what the Quran is and the power it carries, we develop a different appreciation for it. The Quran is a divine miracle, subhanAllah. We have to remember that. Its recitation, like any other sound, is energy and vibrations. However, this energy is otherworldly. Think of diving into a pool of divine energy, dipping into that, you come out soaking in a touch of divine light. That is nur. Because the Quran is structured by the one that created you, It structures your thought process and aligns your emotional intelligence and cognition in such a way that evolves you into the best version of yourself. Neuroplasticity is a fairly new scientific discovery. It is the brain's ability to rewire itself. With your recitation, you are lighting up areas of the brain that engage all of it, and not only limited areas, which expands your mental capacity. This will transform your life. In every leadership training I go to, the conversations around EQ or emotional intelligence are big discussions. EQ is the ability to understand others and to know how to navigate human feelings and interactions to be successful. وَلَتَكُونُوا مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةً يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَلَى الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Let there arise out of you a band of people inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. They are the ones that attain success. Success comes from morality and goodness. Aisha radiallahu anha, when asked about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, كان خلق القرآن. He, alayhi salatu wasalam, his character was the Quran. The Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was the most successful human to walk the face of this earth. Look at the impact he, alayhi salatu wasalam, has left by the grace of God. Over 1,400 years later, and his legacy still continues. And what was he like? He, alayhi salatu wasalam, was like the Quran. He, alayhi salatu wasalam, was a walking embodiment of the Quran. What were my inspiring students like? They were a reflection of the scripture they studied, they practiced, and internalized daily. Once I made that connection, that was my secret to success. If I didn't have time to read it, I'd listen to it and let the barakah of it flood into my life. Definitions of success. Now, how can we stay driven, motivated to succeed? First, we have to identify our ultimate goal and stay focused on that objective. Our ultimate goal should be Jannah. So we have to make sure to align our smaller goals to lead to that success. That should be the way we approach life. The dunya, this worldly life, and what is in it are tools to attain the ultimate success, Jannah, inshallah. Islam is a deen of balance. We have to keep in mind that one teaching does not conflict with another, but that they complement one another to give us a holistic way of life that will ensure a successful hereafter as well. In essence, we are taught to plan for both. It is a common theme within many of our cultures, unfortunately, to equate worldly success with after-worldly doom, which is far from the truth. Islam teaches us that moderation in all aspects is the key. We need to be critical thinkers and not just take things on a surface level, leading to misunderstandings or a warped view of Islam. We are taught to want success or goodness in both. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Our Lord, give us in this world that which is good, and in hereafter that which is good, and save us from the torment of the fire. This ayah reminds us of the appropriate approach to life. There is no shame in being ambitious, so long as you align your ambitions with the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the intention of pursuing the ultimate success. As a matter of fact, the ayah encourages us to want goodness in this life as well as the later in the akhirah. To want success all the way around. As believers of the most generous, a God who has a capacity to give and bless infinitely, we should have an open heart approach to things in life and not minimize our own potentials of growth. Weed out those negative thoughts that suggest that wanting more is inherently bad. Be greedy for goodness. أُولَٰئِكَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ وَهُمْ لَهَا سَابِقُونَ. It is they who hasten to every good work and they who are foremost in them. Sari' or sabiq can be loosely translated to the word race, right? So it implies that those are the people who have an eagerness to take action towards goodness. Not just go towards it slowly, but they're eager, they're racing towards it, they're running towards it. We are reminded to be active in pursuing the ultimate success of Jannah by pursuing every good work. ولكل وجهة وهو موليها فاستبقوا الخيرات أينما تكونوا يأتي بكم الله جميعا إن الله على كل شيء قدير. Everyone pursues his goal. Compete with each other in performing good deeds. Wherever you are, God will bring you all together, and God has power over all things. Keep in mind that this dunya is fleeting, and we can never catch it if we chase it. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes the hereafter his goal, Allah will make his heart rich and organize his affairs, and the world comes to him whether it wants to or not. And whoever makes the world his goal, Allah puts his poverty right before his eyes and disorganizes his affairs, and the world does not come to him except what has been decreed for him. The point is to use this world as an escalator to reach our next destination. So think of going up an escalator or running against it. It can work for or against you, depending on which way you face. If you're facing the right way, inshallah, it will help you succeed and arrive at your ultimate destination. You'll see the stairs following you and elevating you up higher. And if you're faced the wrong way, you'll be running and getting nowhere. Realigning our intentions brings everything back to the center and keeps us grounded. Success is not a destination. It's an ongoing journey. In the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer, we say Hayya ala al-falah, falah indicating success. We are called to success through the performance of prayer. Salat is ongoing. It is a lifelong commitment for Muslims, 5 times a day, every day. And when we slip up in between those prayers, we are reminded of our purpose and to hold ourselves accountable when we humbly bow down in prostration the next salah. Salah keeps us on track. It reminds us of duty and direction and is an ongoing effort. So when the adhan is calling us to falah, success, what gem can we derive from this? That all types of success are ongoing. They're ongoing efforts and not destinations. That you never stop hustling, not in regards to worldly success, but especially not in regards to after. That builds our resilience for when we inevitably experience failure. Salah trains us to have tawakkul, full reliance on Allah. It cultivates sabr, or patience, which in turn breeds resilience. Remember, patience is not complacency and tawakkul is not inaction. Ta'qidha wa tawakkul. Tie your camel and then have reliance on Allah. Do your part. It is insulting to be lazy and expect success. It comes from a sense of entitlement where we almost feel like God owes us what we think we want, when in reality He owes us nothing and we owe it to Him to be grateful and to try to earn His approval. Sabr and tawakkul are 2 extremely powerful and beautiful characteristics. They're essential to every form of success. We need to be careful not to misconstrue these noble acts of faith and being. Misunderstanding the reality of these acts gives them a negative stigma, leading many people to a point where they become frustrated to be reminded of their virtues and missing the fruits of their presence in their lives. Finally, I want to remind you all that it's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it, inshallah. Not a leaf falls from a tree without God knowing it, and not an ounce of your sincere efforts goes in vain. Allah has said, I have prepared for my righteous servants what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no heart has conceived. Whoever is removed from the hellfire and entered into paradise is indeed successful, for the life of this world is only enjoyment and deception. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this gathering. May He subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the highest levels of success in this world and the ultimate success of the hereafter. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. May He subhanahu wa ta'ala guide our individual journeys and bless each one of us along the ways. And may He subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the patience to navigate the struggles of life and the wisdom to appreciate His plans for us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.